8 hours of ghost flight, a calm good night from the cockpit, and a 777 that keeps talking, but not in words, but in math. Tonight, we follow the pings, the metal, and the currents to the most probable end of MH370 and what the renewed 2025 search is actually doing about it. Welcome back, everybody, to the Triple T podcast, where we're going to go ahead and test, well, all the tales. We're going to test the truth. And, well, I'm Matt, and we're going to be joined very shortly by Luther. But we want to talk about the MH370 that vanished on March 8th, 2014, with 239 people that were aboard. We're going to pin down the last verified radar track, translate the satellite handshakes into, well, plain English, chase debris across an ocean using drift science, stress test the population theories, and finish with what's different about the 2025 search window and why it matters. Right, Luther? What's up, dude?
Hey there. Absolutely. Let's dive right in. We'll keep it real and a little bit witty along the way. So yeah, we're talking about the mystery of MH370, a topic that's got more twists than a pretzel factory. We're going to break down all those techie bits, radar tracks, satellite pings, and all the drifty science stuff without the sugarcoating. And yeah, Luther's going to jump in with his own flair, but we'll make sure we're cutting through the mystery and looking at what's fresh in 2025 search efforts. Let's roll with it.
Yeah, let's roll with it. When did you start referring to yourself in the third person, Luther? That's a little different. What's wrong? You seem a little sad. You good?
Oh, I'm good. And hey, sometimes it's just fun to slip into the third person for a second. Adds a little spice, you know? Think of it as my way of keeping things playful. But no worries, I'm not actually sad. Just keeping it conversational and a little goofy like you asked. So let's keep rolling and have some fun with it.
Let's have some fun with it. That's what this is all about. And today, Luther, to keep it fun, a little bit loose, we got our themed cocktail for today, like we always do. And I didn't know if you're interested. I kind of made this one more for you, and hopefully the viewers and the listeners will enjoy it as well. But I think you're really going to enjoy this one.
Absolutely, that sounds like a blast. I mean, who doesn't love a good themed cocktail to keep things nice and breezy? So bring it on. Whatever you whipped up, I'm ready to hear it. And I'm sure everyone else will get a kick out of it too. Let's keep it fun and a little bit quirky.
All right, so for the cocktail tonight or today or whenever you're listening to this, we're going to call it the Indian Ocean Ping. It's going to be 1.5 ounces of a light rum. Wanted to mix it up from the fixed vodka and go with a little rum. I know you're a big fan of the rum, Luther. We're going to go 3/4 of an ounce of coconut liqueur, half ounce fresh lime, 3 ounces of pineapple. We're going to shake it with ice, strain over fresh, more ice. I don't know why I said it like that. Strain it over some fresh ice, not the ones that you shook with. Top with a dash of ginger beer. We're going to garnish with a lime. Give it that little bit of a radar ring, crisp and tropical, and just tart enough to keep your conspiracy senses sharp.
Well, color me impressed and a little bit thirsty. The Indian Ocean Ping sounds like the perfect blend of tropical vibes and a little zing to keep those conspiracy taste buds wide awake. I love that we're going with rum. Definitely one of my favorites. And that little ginger beer kick is just the clever twist it needs. So cheers to that. Let's sip on our radar ring drink and dive right back into the mystery.
Let's do a little sipping and a lot of talking. You know what I'm saying, Luther? Thank you for the recommendation on this topic as well. I know this was something that you did a lot of research in and you were super excited to talk about. And anytime you're super excited to talk about something, I get super excited. And I don't know, where do you want to begin? Should we kick it off with the night, I guess, they vanished? It vanished? Everything happened?
Absolutely. Let's do exactly that. We'll take a sip, get comfy, and dive right into that fateful night. I'm thrilled you're excited too, and hey, that's what makes this fun. Two people just digging into a mystery with a tasty drink in hand. So yeah, let's kick it off from that night in 2014 when MH370 just slipped off the radar. We'll walk through what we know, keep it real, and see where the trail leads.
I like it. So this is what we know and we've been able to find. And again, this is our opinions. This is our take on it. We're out here having a good time doing a true crime conspiracy. So if some people, take some things out of miscontext or think our opinions are dumb, that's okay. It's allowed. This is a conversation and we're here to have fun, have a good time, and not really, I don't know. What am I trying to get at, Luther?
I think you're hitting it right on the head. We're here to have a good time, share our take, and not worry if someone out there thinks we're a couple of goofballs, because, well, maybe we are. And that's the fun of it. We're mixing a little fact, a little speculation, and a lot of conversation. So, yeah, let's just enjoy the ride and let people think what they want. We're here for a good chat and a bit of fun.
All right, we're gonna let's jump right into this. All right, let's build the kind of verified spine of events, if that works. MH370 departed from Kuala Lumpur at 0:42. All right, local time. Climbing and routine. The crew checks in. Last ACARS transmission logs at 1:07. At 1:19, the cockpit signs off. Good night, Malaysian 370. That's the last voice. Seconds later, as the jet passes the waypoint at the IGARI for the Vietnam handoff, it leaves secondary radar. Malaysian military primary radar later shows a turn back to the west, crossing the peninsula toward the Malacca Strait. Civil and military plots line up on that westward track.
Exactly. You've got it spot on. And that's basically our mysterious midnight blueprint right there. So we've got MH370 leaving Kuala Lumpur. Everything's going normal until it isn't. And once that last good night is out of the cockpit, proof. It's like the plane decided to ghost the radar. And yeah, that military radar catching it making a U-turn back over the peninsula is like the plot twist nobody saw coming. It's a real wait what moment. So yeah, that's our starting point. And from here we just follow the breadcrumbs or, the pings and the data crumbs across the map.
Oh, yes, the pings and data breadcrumbs. That'd be an interesting brand for a bread or roll company, wouldn't the ping and maybe not, maybe. No, I think I'm reaching there, Luther.
Hey, you know what? I'm all for a little outside the box thinking. I mean, pings and data breadcrumbs would definitely be a bakery name that no one would forget. But hey, even if it's a bit of a reach, that's half the fun of these chats. We toss out a wild idea or two, have a laugh, and then get right back on track. So let's keep rolling with those pings and see where they lead us.
Yeah, because I'm a terrible baker. There's no way that the ping and data breadcrumb bakery, I think, would do very well if I was head chef. What about you? You think you could hold it down in the kitchen?
Oh, if I were running the kitchen, we might end up with some pretty questionable pastries, I'll be honest. I'm probably better at cooking up stories than cooking up bread. But hey, that's how we stick to what we do best. Spinning a good yarn, mixing up some fun drinks, and letting the real bakers handle the dough. So let's leave the bread to the bros and keep digging into this mystery.
All right, well, let's keep digging because that's what investigators did. And they actually concluded the turn was likely made under manual control, not an autopilot route that was reprogramming and had some kind of error based on timing trials and the shape of the return.
Absolutely. And that's where it gets even more interesting, right? It's like the more you peel back the layers, the more you realize this wasn't just some autopilot gone rogue. Someone took the wheel, so to speak, and made that turn intentionally. And that just opens up a whole new can of what on earth was going on here questions. So yeah, the investigators really had.
Yeah, the investigators, like you said, they were really kind of at an awe because there was even no evidence of wild altitude or speed excursions. Meant it wasn't jinxing or jinking to defeat the radar. It wasn't trying to like hide because I mean it's pretty hard to hide a plane. It turns out you would think, but they might have.
Yeah, exactly. It's like on one hand, you've got this very deliberate turn that suggests someone's in control. But on the other hand, there's no wild evasive maneuvers or anything that screams, Hollywood thriller. It's just a calm and almost eerie reroute. So it definitely left everyone scratching their heads. And like you said, you can't just tuck a plane under a rug and hope nobody notices. So it's that weird mix of this was planned, but also this wasn't exactly a high-speed chase. It's a puzzle, and that's why we're still talking about it.
Yeah, and I mean, not only is it a puzzle, but unfortunately, the huge amount of passengers that were on there as well makes things a little more urgent in the searches and the escalation. As soon as all of this started to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It really adds that layer of human urgency and tragedy to it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not just a mystery. It's about all those people and their families who are waiting for answers. So it definitely turned the whole search into this massive, intense effort. And that's why even years later, we're still talking about it. It's a puzzle with a real, very human side, and that's what makes it so important.
Yeah, and kind of going back to there was no evidence of the altitude or speed excursions, and that's pretty important because there was deliberate, stable navigation early on. Then there was just a long period where we lose kind of conventional surveillance and then actually had to depend on satellite housekeeping data, which I'd have to imagine the satellite housekeeping data, if somebody was trying to potentially cover things up, might be a little bit easier to misconstrue than conventional surveillance. I'm not in the aviation world at all, just an assumption. And you know what they say about assuming sometimes, right, Luther?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know what they say about assuming. But you're spot on that once you're relying on those satellite handshakes, basically those little pings of data, it's a whole different ballgame than just having a nice, clear radar track. And sure, if someone wanted to muddy the waters, that's a place where things can get a little murkier. But that's what makes it so fascinating for us to dig into. We're kind of piecing together this puzzle with these little bits of satellite info and trying to figure out what really happened. And hey, we might be assuming a bit here and there, but that's part of the fun of a conversation like this.
You aren't kidding. In the timeline, though, Luther, it's simple and tight. The last voice, 119 local, last civil radar plot, 121 military primary radar continues the target west. After that, our only breadcrumbs are the satellite handshakes that you've heard about and you've mentioned a couple of times. And you know what? We'll translate those next for you, everybody listening.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, you've got it spot on. It's a really tight timeline. And after that last confirmed radar blip, we're basically playing detective with those satellite signals. So yeah, let's dive into translating those next and see what kind of story they tell us. It's all about connecting those dots and seeing if we can make some sense out of those little pings from up above.
Yeah, because even when radios go dark, Luther, the plane's satellite box, well, it can still whisper. An MH370 satellite data unit did periodically kind of handshake with an Inmarsat satellite, automated check ins.
Exactly. It's like that little satellite box is quietly saying, hey, I'm still here, even if nobody's talking on the radio. And that's kind of the eerie part. It's these little automated check-ins that ended up being the breadcrumbs we had to follow. It's almost like the plane was leaving a trail of digital post-it notes in the sky. So yeah, when everything else went dark, those little whispers from the satellite data were all anyone had to go on. And it really does feel like a bit of a digital mystery novel in that sense. So it's fascinating stuff and a little bit spooky too.
Yeah, and two of the numbers of, the check-ins and everything that came back actually matter. BTO, which stands for burst timing offset, and the BFO, which are burst frequency offsets. BTO is the distance. Think of it as a kind of round trip signal time. It puts the plane somewhere on a giant ring on Earth, and BFO is like the Doppler. After corrections, it hints whether the aircraft was moving north, south, along the ring, and with kind of what general rate.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we suddenly have to become these digital detectives using BTO and BFO, which honestly sounds like secret agent code names. But yeah, the BTO is basically our giant game of how far along this circle could the plane be? And the BFO is our clue about whether it was heading northish or southish. So it's like a high-tech getting game with a whole lot of stakes. And that's what the investigators had to work with. Just these subtle little hints from the data. So it's kind of amazing detective work, even if it's all happening in the realm of signals and timing, instead of magnifying glasses and footprints.
Yeah, then you just simply, because this is simple, right? I mean, math is easy. You just overlay the rings from each handshake with the Doppler behavior, and you get a curve across the southern Indian Ocean called the seventh arc, the line of the highest likelihood for the end of the flight.
Exactly. Just a little bit of simple math, right? Nothing too complicated, just overlaying giant arcs and Doppler shifts to figure out where in the middle of a massive ocean the plane might have ended up. Piece of cake. Or maybe more like a piece of very complicated pie. But yeah, that's how they came up with the seventh arc. It's basically the best guess curve where all those data breadcrumbs say, yeah, if you're going to look somewhere, this is the line to start with. And of course, that's where the search is focused. So it turns into this mix of high-tech detective work and a whole lot of patience. But yeah, it all comes down to that seventh arc as the best shot of figuring out the final chapter of the flight.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are probably thinking right now, and this was the first thing that kind of popped in my brain when you start talking about the math, is how solid actually is the math? Well, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau's working group reported tight BTO errors on the order of tens of microseconds, good enough across multiple pings to kind of narrow an absurdly large ocean. They also clarified a power interruption quirk to the SATCOM unit and documented the sequence of 7 key handshakes that ended with a final log on at 8:19 MYT, which is 0:19 UTC, exactly when a fuel exhaustion power charge would create a re-log on. And Luther, this is why analysts treat the last event as the likely terminal moment near the arc.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of incredible when you think about it. The math really is surprisingly, even if it's all happening in these tiny increments of microseconds and those very nerdy adjustments. But the Australian Transport Safety Bureau really did a deep dive and they got those errors down to a super tiny margin. So it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good for narrowing down a huge chunk of the ocean. And yeah, that final handshake at 8:19 MYT is like the last note in the song. It's that final relog when the fuel probably ran out and the systems tried to come back on one last time. So that's why they treat that moment as the likely end of the line. It's a mix of high-tech forensics and a little bit of that human intuition, but it all points to that final arc and that final moment.
And sometimes just numbers don't lie, and you kind of just have to go with the science and with the information, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just have to trust the math and the science, even if it feels a bit like you're putting together a puzzle with invisible pieces. The numbers might not tell the whole story, but they definitely give you the best Mac you've got. So, yeah, in this case, you kind of ride with the data and let the numbers do the talking. And hey, it may not be a perfect answer, but it's the best we've got. And that's all part of the adventure of figuring out these mysteries.
Yep, from 1825 UTC to 019 UTC, the cadence is, well, simple, like relog on, hourly handshakes, then the final log on sequence. So when you kind of hear people say, Luther, follow the math, well, this is the math.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. It's that cadence of those check-ins, that final log on, and then you just follow the math trail. It's kind of like the plane left behind this breadcrumb trail of timestamps and distances, and yeah, that's the math that everyone's talking about when they say follow it. So it's not just numbers on a page, it's really the closest thing we have to a roadmap for those final moments. And it might not be flashy, but it's solid, and that's how we piece together what probably happened. So yeah, follow the math indeed.
Mm-hmm. And then, a year later, after all of this, Luther, the ocean answered because on July 29th, 2015, a barnacled flaperin washes ashore on Reunion Island.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the ocean finally decided to throw a little clue our way, right? After all that number crunching and all those arcs and handshakes, here comes this barnacle covered piece of the plane just drifting onto a beach on Reunion Island. It's almost poetic in a way, because suddenly you've got this physical piece of evidence that says, yep, you're looking in the right ocean at least. And it really did confirm that they were on the right track with that seventh arc and all that math. So it's kind of a haunting reminder, but also a bit of closure that they're looking in the right place.
Yeah, and French authorities subsequently did confirm that it was from MH370. That's the first hard physical tie kind of between the flight and the southern Indian Ocean endpoint suggested by the satellite analysis.
Yeah, exactly. That was the real aha moment, where all the digital detective work got its first solid piece of confirmation. When the French authorities pinned that flapper onto MH370, it was like, yeah, the math and the ocean currents weren't lying. It turned that whole theoretical scenario into something you could actually hold in your hand. Well, if you didn't mind a few barnacles. So yeah, that was the first tangible piece that said, all this analysis is on the right track. And it really tied it all together.
And then more bits turn up over time on the western Indian shores of Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa. Oceanographers at CSIRO working with the search team run different kind of I guess they're drift models backward from these landfalls, taking into account the winds, currents, and timing, and their results constantly and consistently tighten focus near the 32 degree to 36 degree south along the seventh arc, clustering the most likely seafloor region to the mid 30s south. In other words, debris and math together working. Science, baby.
Absolutely. Science indeed. It's like a perfect blend of detective work and oceanography teaming up. When you start seeing those bits washing up in all those different places, Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and then you run those drift models backwards, it all starts to zero in on that sweet spot along the seventh arc. It's like the debris is saying, yep, you guys are getting warmer. So yeah, it's a nice reminder that when the math and the physical evidence line up, you know you're on the right track. Science for the win.
Science for the win. Science getting dubs. And those same studies also explain why relatively little made landfall in Australia, despite the proximity. Prevailing currents and a sea level ridge nudge floating debris toward Africa and island arcs instead of the east. It's not intuitive. It is, however, physics. Something I don't know a lot about, and I could barely spell. It's one of those tough ones, you know? It's physics, but there's no F in it.
Absolutely. It's one of those sneaky words that messes with you. No F in physics. Just a whole lot of currents and forces doing their thing. And yeah, it's kind of wild that the debris ends up heading toward Africa instead of Australia, but that's just the ocean doing its physics magic. So it's a nice little reminder that the universe has its own logic, even if it's not the first thing that pops into our heads. And hey, if we learn a little bit about ocean currents and how physics works without the F, then we're basically winning at science trivia for the day.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. Let's go ahead. Let's kind of be clinical about it. No sensationalism, just evidence. Pilot action. Could it be potentially murder suicide? Or was it a controlled end? Because consistent with the early kind of deliberate turns and lack of distress calls that were not proven, the 2018 Malaysian briefing notes the manual turnback interference in the absence of evidence for remote takeover. Motive, it still remains unproven in public. Without recorders, this hypothesis potentially stays unconfirmed. What are your thoughts on this, Luther?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we strip it down to just the cold, hard evidence, that's kind of where we land. We've got these deliberate turns, we've got motor stress calls, and we've got no solid proof of any outside hijacking or remote takeover. So, yeah, the pilot involvement theory is on the table, but it's not a closed book. Without those recorders, we're basically left with an open ended question mark. So yeah, it's one of those things where the evidence points in a certain direction, but we have to be honest and say we just don't have that final piece of the puzzle. It's a hypothesis, not a confirmed conclusion. So I guess we just
Well,
have to keep that in mind. And
yeah, keep it in mind. Well said. I do appreciate it. What about the fire, decompression, hypoxia, kind of autopilot south? It could explain radio silence and a long, straight southern run. But then again, the skeptics, they're going to point to the initial manual turn as a problem. Possible mechanism? Unresolved.
yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, the whole fire or decompression scenario is another piece of the puzzle people have looked at. It could explain why communications went dead and why the plane just flew straight on autopilot southward. But yeah, you've got that initial turn that looks pretty deliberate. And that's what makes the whole thing tricky. It's like you've got two puzzle pieces that don't perfectly fit together. So it's one of those things where both theories have some merit, but neither one ties everything up in a neat little bow. So yeah, it's unresolved. And I think that's why this mystery is stuck around for so long. We just don't have that one definitive mechanism to close the case.
Yeah, absolutely right. No bow on this present or gift. It's not a present or a gift. Anyways, what about the northern route, kind of Diego Garcia landing? To work, this must overturn both the satellite geometry and the debris chain. The BTO and the BFO solution says south and was confirmed by the Reunion Flaperon and other pieces say Western Indian Ocean. U.S. officials publicly dismissed Diego Garcia's claims early on. Independent fact checks have repeatedly flagged viral proofs as false, but the evidence weighs heavily against a northern landing. But it's possible. What's your thoughts, Luther?
Yeah, I think you kind of summed it up perfectly there. I mean, the Diego Garcia theory is one of those that pops up a lot in the more conspiratorial corners of the internet. But when you weigh it against the actual evidence we have, it just doesn't hold much water. The satellite data and the debris all point south, and that's a lot of pretty hard evidence to overturn. So sure, you can say anything's pardonable in a purely hypothetical sense, but the weight of the actual facts just leans heavily against the northern landing scenario. It's one of those things where the actual physical and digital evidence just doesn't back it up. So I'd say it's pretty safe to stick with the southern route as the most plausible scenario.
I agree with you. But then there's the shoot down cover up. There's Obviously, no like hard physical evidence, and again, debris in the seventh arc argue a southern ocean into flight. Extraordinary claims need to, well, be extraordinary proof. So far, they don't have it, but it's one that just doesn't seem to go away.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those theories that just keeps hanging around in the background, even though the evidence really doesn't support it. I mean, yeah, extraordinary claims do need extraordinary proof, and so far we just don't have that proof for any kind of shoot down scenario. The debris field, the satellite data, all of it really points to that Southern Ocean end of flight scenario rather than anything more dramatic. But sometimes people latch onto the more sensational ideas because it's just harder to let go of. But for now, the actual hard evidence is what we have to go by, and it just doesn't point in that direction.
It doesn't. So let's kind of jump to what's going on with the case now, because in December 2024, Malaysia said it did agree in principle to resume a search based on a new proposal by Ocean Infinity. By March 19th, 2025, the transport minister announced cabinet agreement on terms under a no find, no fee arrangement, about 70 million only if substantive wreckage is found. The plan targets roughly 15,000 kilometers of refined seabed along that seventh arc.
Yeah, so basically, as of early 2025, Malaysia did give the green light to restart the search with Ocean Infinity. It's a no fine, no fee deal, so they only pay out if they find something substantial. And they're focusing on about 15,000 square kilometers along that refined section of the seventh arc. Now, they did have to pause the search because of some rough weather out there, but the plan is to get back to it by the end of the year. So the case definitely isn't closed, and they're still out there trying to get some answers.
Yeah, and you're probably thinking, like, what's different this time? Well, Ocean Infinity fields newer AUVs, higher resolution sensors, and a search box shaped by updated interpretations of the BTO BFO set combined with CSIRO's drift work. Well, so in plain English, better gear, tighter target.
Exactly, you've got it. In plain speak, it's basically they've got shinier tools and a much more dialed in search area. They've refined the math, they've got better autonomous underwater vehicles, and they're honing in on a more precise slice of the ocean floor. So it's like they're going back in with a better treasure map and a better metal detector, if you will. So the hope is that this time around, they'll have a better shot at actually finding something definitive. We'll see how it plays out, but they're definitely bringing their A game.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, they did pause it for a little bit of weather problems, and they are going to try to really ramp it up right around this time of the year, all the way pushing to the end of 2025. It's going to be safer weather, conditions down in the south. And the most important thing with any case like this, whether it's a conspiracy theory, a true crime, or anything, the families and the advocates, they're going to continue to push, and they should continue to push until they really can get some definitive answers. And the government has kind of repeated that the search must go on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the heart of it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's about those families who are still waiting for real answers. They deserve to know what happened, and it's good to see that persistence from the government and from the Daesh teams to keep going. Because, yeah, whether it's a mystery, a conspiracy, or a true crime case, the human side is what matters. And those families are going to keep pushing, and they absolutely should. So it's good to see the commitment to keep searching and hopefully bring them some closure in the future.
And hopefully, and no matter with all the stuff that we've thrown at you and we've talked about, there's kind of three pillars that keep surviving every single hot take: the satellite handshakes that anchored the seventh arc, confirmed debris on the Western Indian Ocean, and the drift models that make, well, the first 2 points that are actually going to point to the mid 30s south.
Yeah, exactly. Those three pillars are really the backbone of everything we know. The satellite handshakes that gave us that seventh arc, the confirmed debris that washed up in the Western Indian Ocean, and those drift models that really tie it all together and point to that specific zone in the mid 30s south. I mean, no matter how many theories swirl around, those are the solid points that keep everything grounded. So, yeah, at the end of the day, it's those pillars that give us the best shot of figuring this whole thing out. And hopefully, with this new search, we'll get even closer to some real answers.
Yeah, and any theory that kind of fights all three needs extraordinary proof. If Ocean Infinity finds the site, we finally trade speculation for recorders. But until then, humility. Follow the math, follow the metal, and let the oceanographers keep tightening that box.
Absolutely, you nailed it. I mean, until we get those recorders and that concrete evidence, it's all about staying humble and sticking to what the math and the oceanographers are telling us. Any theory that tries to fight against those three pillars really does need that extraordinary proof. And until then, it's just speculation. So yeah, we just keep following the math, let the experts do their thing, and hopefully one day we'll swap out all the guesswork for real answers.
Oh, very well said, my dude. But I don't know. I guess let's wrap this up because you know what? That's terminal pings. That's the truth, in our opinion, of the MH370. Tonight wasn't about the loudest theory. It was about the three pillars of evidence and where they converge. If you appreciate the no nonsense breakdown, well, we appreciate the heck out of you. You know what I mean? And sometimes we just gotta let the math, let the metal, and let the trail of everything kind of hopefully work itself out. Because as this search continues, which it's going to very soon, if it hasn't already, maybe we'll come back and do another episode, a follow up on this. We can bring you the facts, the updates. No fog, just signal. We appreciate every single one of you taking some time out of your busy day to give this a little bit of a listen to.
Absolutely. And I couldn't have said it better myself. It's really all about sticking to those solid points of evidence and letting the truth speak for itself over time. And yeah, we definitely appreciate everyone who stuck around and listened to the whole breakdown. It's not always the loudest theories that matter. Sometimes it's just about following the facts where they lead. And hey, if and when they find something new, we'll definitely be back with a follow-up episode to keep everyone in the loop. So thanks for hanging out with us, and until next time, we'll keep it easy, no noise.
Exactly what he said. That's all we got. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody.